So somebody asked me this about al Khalal, so I just want to respond because I feel like the Salafi got him in a pretty good bind. So let me just try to respond. So, anyways, al Khalal is a second generation Hanbali. Um, I actually made a mistake in this chapter. I wanted to edit it, but there's a statement in here that I forgot, or maybe I did put it in there. Anyways, what I want to do is show this is a statement where Al Khalal has a really, and he's a Hanbali, and he was very harsh on a Tirmidhi, right? So a Tirmidhi rejected the hadith of the Prophet sitting with Allah on the throne, and then he said, "Oh, he's a Jahmi." He said he's a kafir and people should not pray for him and all that stuff. Basically, what the Salafis are saying is that this is a different Tirmidhi, right? And he says, and their evidence of that is from Al-Dhahabi, right? So Dhahabi says Al-Tirmidhi is not Abu Isa Al-Tirmidhi, the author of Al-Jami, right? Rather, he is a man from the Jahmiyyah of his time whose name is At-Tirmidhi, right? Oh, sorry, not well known. So here's my response to that. First of all, I did make a video um, about Abu Hassan al-Ashari, and I talk about how Ad-Dahabi says that al-Ashari has three phases, and I refute that, right, that he actually has two phases. So you have to understand something. Even though I respect Ad-Dahabi, and he has really good history books, you know, in the end, this is his opinion, right? There's another thing, for example, where I reference where he says the chain of Ahmed ibn Hanbal's book Rad al Jahmiya is weak. That's his opinion. Salafis don't accept that opinion, right? And the Asharis might accept it because maybe it aligns more with their creed because they don't want that book to be from him, right? But the point is that he has to, like, not to disrespect him, but you have to have proof for this claim because in my opinion the issue with this is that when you read, first of all, let's clarify this. He says this is backed by the statement Khalal quotes elsewhere in the book as saying, but he needs to prove that because I don't know exactly what he's talking about. But here's the key, right? If you actually look at the description here, let me find it for you. Somebody came up to Abu Bakr al-Khalal and said, "What do you say about this Tirmidhi who rejected the eminence of the Prophet?" Right, and then the ruling is whoever rejects his hadith is a zindiq. So what I think is that what the Salafi is saying is that they never met each other. Now, first of all, here are the facts, right? The facts are that Al Khalal and Al Tirmidhi lived in the exact same time period, right? It's like, a few years. I think they were born a few years. Well, they don't have the exact date for when um, Al Khalal was born, but they let me get you the exact date. Give me 1 second. All right. So Al Khalal died about 20 years after Tirmidhi, or about 30, 20 years after him, right? So they lived in the same time period. That's fact number one. Fact number two is Jamia Tirmidhi is a muhaddith, right? Fact number three is Al Khalal is, also a guy who is collecting hadith in this book, right? So that is important, right? Because you have to understand that when you come up to somebody and say, "What do you say about this Tirmidhi who rejected this hadith?" Essentially, well, I think the assumption is that it must be a relevant figure within hadith. Why would you ask about a random Jahmi as you're claiming if it's a random guy? And I don't want to be disrespectful towards a Dhahabi because he was living in a different time period. He doesn't have the internet like us, but he's saying he is a man from the Jahmiyyah, right? Who's unknown. If he's unknown, then how can you know him? You know what I mean? If you don't know him, then how can you say who he is? You know what I mean? And I think the evidence points to this being Tirmidhi. First of all, he doesn't have this hadith in his book, right? They lived in the same time period. They both frequented a general area, like in the Persian area. They're both in that region, him and Al Khalal. They're both Muhaddithin. I just think that the evidence points to it being this at Tirmidhi, and other scholars. Let me get you. This is you can look at this article. It's from like a Saudi Salafi scholar who he doesn't actually mention Al Khalal, but he says at Tirmidhi was takfired for having an opinion on something. And I know he's talking about this, right? So he believes that it's the same at Tirmidhi. Now I know he's just a random guy. I don't even know who he is, honestly. But for a Salafi to believe that he is the same Tirmidhi indicates that it's not just my opinion, right? And there is some criticism from Ibn Taymiyyah and I believe Ibn al-Qayyim, where they say that um, he actually says that something that At-Tirmidhi says is of the Jahmiyyah, right? So I don't know. I think it's the same one. Honestly, I just don't. There's no evidence. Like, why would they come to Abu Bakr al-Khalal and say, "What do you think of this guy who's part of the Jahmi sect?" You're saying he's part of the Jahmi sect. I don't see why you would call him Jahmi as an insult if he already identifies as one, as you're claiming, right? At this effect, the Jahmi man rejects his hadith. Calling people Jahmi as an insult um, is typically for people who don't identify as Jahmi. If you identify as part of the group, then you could call them that, right? I mean, then it would you usually wouldn't call that as an insult. You understand what I mean? So yeah, that's my opinion on it. You know, in the end, Dahabi, let's be real here, there's no proof behind this claim. He's saying he is not this one. It's a man from the Jahmiyyah of his whose name is unknown. So what do you mean? How do you know it's him then if you don't know him? Like if we don't have a biography of this supposed other Tirmidhi, right, who was relevant enough for people to put this in this major book, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. Like if it was a random guy part of the Jahmiyyah sect, why would you even? Why is he even worth mentioning here? To me, it sounds like because Tirmidhi is actually a relevant figure within Hadith, that's why he was worth bringing up. That's why he's worth even talking about this book. That's my opinion on it. In the end, it's you could either take this, which I believe is not supported by any evidence, other than I don't know what the evidence of this is, other than Dahabi put it in his book. And like I said, Dahabi also put that Al Ashari went through 3 phases, but he didn't prove it. He didn't give you evidence of it. So when it comes to history, there's the data and the conclusion. Um, you know, Dahabi is really good at collecting the data, and sometimes he's really good at the conclusion, but nobody's right all the time. So definitely disagree with him that Al Ashari had 3 phases. I I feel like I refuted that pretty clearly in my chapter on him. Um, so I don't agree with Dahabi's conclusion here. That's my final opinion on it. And it's not just I don't agree with it. I think there's way more evidence to suggest. Remember they lived at the same time period. They were both muhaddithin, right? They were both in the same region. He's a relevant figure in hadith. Of course, his opinion is relevant enough for you to put it in your book. You understand what I mean? If it's just a random Jahmi guy who identifies as part of the Jahmi sect, I don't know why anybody would even pay attention to him, right? But yeah, that's my opinion. But yeah, he says, look, he's atheism, heresy, right? He was very angry with him. So you can see why the Salafis don't want. And Abu Bakr al-Khalal is similar to what we find in the books. So Ahmed ibn Hanbal was said to have criticized Abu Hanifa. But you have to remember that Abu Hanifa died, I believe, 20 years before Ahmed ibn Hanbal was even born. So anything Ahmed ibn Hanbal says about him is what he heard about him. And I don't know if they really met Tirmidhi and Abu Bakr al-Khalal. Right? That's just what he heard from him. And that's, like when we look at Ahmed ibn Hanbal and we say, oh, did he criticize Abu Hanifa or not? In the end, anything he said about him was based on what other people told him. You understand what I mean? But yeah, that's it. If you have any other questions, you could ask me.